How many of you guessed it was going to be an Audi? Some of you did. Some of you didn't. Some of you thought it would be something really rather weird and wonderful. But here it is, our new super little car that we told you all about. It's an Audi. It's an Audi A2. So for those of you who don't know what an Audi A2 is, it's this. This is a 20-year-old car, and it's quite a small car. Audi actually says, at least if you look on the Wikipedia entry for the car, it says it's a minivan. Now, 20 years ago, the minivan was something rather different around the world, but this was Audi's take on it. They only made them from 1999 to 2005, and worldwide, they didn't sell very well. They didn't sell any of them in America. You can now import them across the pond to America, but they were only really sold around Europe and only in very small numbers. The problem was, it was far too expensive. People didn't understand what this car was supposed to be. When Audi built it, they said, we want to build a small Audi. We don't want to build a cheap Audi. And that's what this is. It's a small Audi and definitely not a cheap Audi. This is what makes this little car so special. The Audi space frame. It's an aluminium space frame. The entire auto is an aluminium framed auto, or aluminum as our colleagues across the Atlantic would say it. We say aluminium. I can't say it myself now anymore. It's an aluminium car, which means it's very light. This car, its curb weight is less than 900 kilograms. That's unheard of in this day and age, but back in those days, that was also a bit of a sensation, such a light little car. And of course, the first thing you think is, well, okay, it's a little car. Is it actually a practical car? Well, let's find out. It's a very practical car. So it's a roomy little car. Let me show you exactly how roomy it is. Now, it's a small, compact, four-door European, shall we say minivan? We'll stick with minivan. No, I don't like the word minivan. That sounds terrible. Let's just call it a little car. Anyway, it is actually very roomy. Remember the original Mini from the 60s? And everyone said, how did they do it? On the inside, incredibly roomy, but also it's a tiny little package on the outside. Well, it's basically the same here. The height is actually the thing that gets you in this car. Now, I'm not the tallest of people, and oh, my wife is filming me from here. Hello. We have got the panorama roof version on this, which is very upmarket, and it's more upmarket because it actually works. A lot of the panorama roofs on these old A2s stopped working years ago. The sort of the cables that make them work, they break, and they're an incredible pain and an incredible cost to put right. But this one has been very well looked after, and we'll get to that in a minute. So it's got this wonderful panorama roof, but it's still, even though it's got that, it's still got amazing headroom. Now, I'm only 5'10", but there's tons of headroom in this thing, even for taller people. But when we get into the back, that's where it becomes even more roomy, believe it or not. Look at that, a cute little ladybird, or ladybug. Apparently insects are dying around the world. Well, certainly not in this part of the world. It's the middle of October, and we have a complete plague of these things around the woods around our house at the moment. It's unbelievable. We actually wanted to film somewhere else this afternoon, and there was a plague. There were literally thousands of these little critters flying around us the whole time, and it's quite difficult to get them out of the car. The car was full of them. Come on. So, fly away. There we go. Right, anyway, back to the roominess of this car. This is me sitting in the back of the car with the driver's seat in its normal position, my normal driving position. I've got tons of room. It's actually quite surprisingly comfortable back here. The trick is the floor space. If you look how low down the floor is in the back of this car, it's quite amazing. Yeah? So you can sit very comfortably. You can get your feet quite far forward, actually. Surprisingly comfortable, and that's thanks to this aluminium space frame that we were telling you about. The car is basically just an aluminium shell. It weighs, the bare shell weighs only 75 kilograms, which means you can basically pick it up by yourself. Now obviously add to that the outer panels, all the bits and bobs and things. The whole car weighs, like I said, under 900 kilograms. That therefore means it's very economical. And the shape of it helps with the economy as well. Let's talk a little bit about the shape of the car. When the A2 came out, people either loved it or hated it. And obviously, judging by the sales figures, most people hated it. And a lot of that was actually down to its shape. Now, nowadays it doesn't look all that offensive, but 20 years ago, this was the only thing in the market that looked like this. We're talking about the same time the first Mercedes A-Class came out. Remember the first Mercedes A-Class? That's the one that fell over when an elk looked at it. Remember that? And that was its main competitor. But of course, Mercedes priced the car a little bit better, so that's why they sold so many of them. Like I say, this was too expensive for most people. They didn't understand it. They weren't willing to pay such a lot of money for such a little car. This was a little car, but still a normally priced Audi. Audi was always a little more sort of highly priced than most of its small car competitors. So anyway, if they had only discovered that this car was actually a sort of a genius car, a supercar, then they would probably have bought it in much larger numbers. Now, it's very light. It doesn't weigh very much, under 900 kilograms. I've said that a couple of times now, but also its aerodynamic properties are amazing. It has a very, very low drag coefficient. I think the numbers were between 0.23 and 0.27 back then, depending on the model. There were different models and different shapes, mainly sort of body kit kind of stuff, but very low then. Now think about it, nowadays a Tesla Model 3 I think has 0.21 or 22 or something like that. So it's basically the same value 20 years ago, which is quite amazing. Now at the front, it's got to be sort of slippery to the air, yeah? So as few openings as possible. Now the lights are completely sealed up there, yeah? We've got that sort of rubber gasket all around the light, so there's hardly any air that can sort of break there. This is a solid panel rather than a grille. Some models had a grille there, some of the later models, for aesthetic reasons, but certainly not for aerodynamic reasons. So the air would fly past this. There is a tiny little grille there to let air into the engine, or down at the bottom. But it's a very slippery shape, a teardrop shape, and it actually comes to a point at the rear of the car, as I will now show you. So aerodynamically speaking, the car comes to a point, and here is this point. It's a spoiler. It's actually a small picnic table, I think. But yeah, this little spoiler here is purely for aerodynamic purposes, and as you can see by the previous owners, sort of parking distance control. They obviously rammed into things all the time, although it does have parking sensors, this one. Anyway, I don't understand that, but there we are. So it has these aerodynamic qualities, so that makes it a very economical car. It is a very economical car. The original sort of development pitch was, we want to build a small car that can take a family of 4 with luggage from Stuttgart in Germany to Milan in Italy. That's exactly 500 kilometers, and they wanted that to happen with 1 tank of fuel. It doesn't sound like much these days, does it? 500 kilometers on a tank of fuel. But when you consider this tank is 34 liters in size, it's an incredibly small tank, that means you have to get 500 kilometers on 34 liters of fuel. That means an average consumption of under 6 liters per 100 kilometers. And this car will do that, which is, for the time, a pretty good figure. A lot of modern cars can't get anywhere near that. So let's talk practicality. A family of 4. It is a 4-seater car, not a 5-seater car. It is literally a 4-seater car. It's not registered for 5 adults, or for 5 people in fact. It's a 4-seater. I'll show you that in a minute. And it has a boot space, it has a trunk space, and it's not that bad for a car of this size. It's deep again, thanks to our little Audi space frame. Yeah, it's very deep, and it has the height, and it opens up very wide and very high, so you can get lots of things in here. The seats, the rear seats, can be actually removed very simply. You can flip this little handle here, fold the seats forward, fold them up, or you can remove them completely. And when that's done, you have, I have no idea what the numbers are, look them up yourselves, a huge amount of boot space back here, and apparently you can get at least 2 full-size washing machines in there. I'm not going to try it, but apparently you can. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention is the engine. And it's quite an ingenious little feature of the Audi A2. Let me show you this. If I pull this little lever down here, normally it would open a latch to open the bonnet or the hood. It doesn't do that. It opens this flap. What's that for? This was the idea behind this little car. You bought this car and you didn't worry about it. You took it to the Audi dealership when it needed a service. The car tells you when it needs a service, obviously, and they would do all the work for you. You don't have to do anything. But obviously, occasionally, you might want to fill up your washer fluid for the front windscreen. So they've given you a little water fill hatch for that. You might want to check your oil from time to time. So the oil dipstick is here to be checked. If you need a little more oil, then why not pop in a little more oil? So they have this oil filler cap here, so you can fill up a little bit of oil. Pop it away, close the flap. Perfect. Hold on though. What if you actually need to get into the engine? What if you need to get in there to do something? For example, the Audi guys, they need to get in there and do some work, don't they? Well, you actually remove the entire hood. So once you've released these guys, you basically grab the whole hood, pull it towards you, and theoretically it should lift up. This side sticks for some stupid reason, because bugger. There we go. And you can remove the entire hood. Now it's an aluminium piece, so it weighs next to nothing. And in there, you then have an engine. This is a 1.4 litre petrol engine, 4-cylinder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-cylinder engine with everything you need. Right, that didn't work because I just noted this little thing here, this piece of plastic is actually broken. A previous owner obviously didn't know how to remove the hood properly and managed to break it. That was a little embarrassing. Let's get it back on. Okay, goes back on properly. Then you close up the little guys. Close up the flap, and there we have an A2, complete with an outtake. So up in the front, this is where you realize it's definitely just a little Audi. It's brilliant. By the way, look at the height of the floor in the front. Yeah, it's a much higher floor. Obviously, you're sitting here driving and you've got your pedals. But on both sides, it's much higher. You have a sort of more relaxed driving position. But under this floor here is where all the electronic gubbins lives. There's a little hatch in there. I won't show it to you now, but there's a little hatch under there. I have to remove the carpets. And there's a little hatch under there with all the electronics, and there's a hidey hole in there. So if you want to hide things, or shall we say smuggle things across the border, then an A2 would be the perfect little car to do it, because on both sides there's plenty of room under the floor to hide things. Anyway, it's an Audi. So here in the middle it looks like a normal Audi. Obviously this car was registered in 2000, so obviously still has a tape deck. How exciting is that? But it has proper air conditioning, it has climate control, automatic climate control, which is rather wonderful. That was an expensive optional extra. It has, look at this, 2 fancy soft motion, I'll do that again, soft motion drinks holders, which is rather exciting. They're very small, obviously, but back in those days, don't forget, we didn't have so many, cup holders back in those days. It's not the best position for a cup holder. When you're driving along, you could easily knock it when you're going for the wipers or something, or if you want to change gear, you could easily knock it, but it had them. There they are. A normal steering wheel, a surprisingly large steering wheel, so it feels like you're driving a much more exciting car than you actually are. It was available with a sports steering wheel option, which was smaller, but it's a big chunky steering wheel, which I like. Typical Audi instruments from the time, nothing terribly exciting there. And one thing that does date to this car is the quality of the plastics. Now when we bought this car a couple of weeks ago, I spent the best part of a whole week getting it clean and tidy and presentable for our presentation video, and most of the interior I managed to get to a sort of it looks like new. Look at this beautiful plastic here. It looks like new. You know, this why it has a grab handle, who knows? But anyway, this all looks like new now. But if you look slightly further down, and I don't know if you can hear that. Yeah, and in the middle here, yeah, this plastic here, it's 20 years old now, and it's just become rather old and tacky, and I mean sticky by tacky. You can scrub it, or you get I think if you get a steam cleaner, you can sort of steam that old plastic off. It's like a plastic coating, or it's a coating on the plastic, that's what I'm trying to say, and you can sort of get that off with a bit of work, a bit of elbow grease, you can get that off, and then the car would look pretty much like new. So I will be doing that in the future, but it's a horrible job, and you have to dismantle everything and remove it from the car. Now, like I say, when we got the car, I spent the best part of a week cleaning it and getting it like this. The seats came up like new. I think I mentioned in the previous video I was going to get an upholstery cleaner, one of those, you know, wet, sucky things, and that sort of worked. That did it, yeah. And they came up like new. The carpets came up like new. The headliner came up like new. So everything was, you know, pretty good. It's only the plastic that dates it and makes it look a little less than perfect, shall we say. But I'm going to be working on that, and I will take you on that journey with me, because that is something a lot of these cars suffer from this era. So I will be showing you how we do that. Now, let's sit down and talk about this A2. This is our A2. Why did we buy it? How much did we pay for it? And what did we have to do to it? Our A2, a 20-year-old car, has just covered 160,000 kilometers in those 20 years. So that's 100,000 miles in 20 years. That's nothing. This car was originally owned by an old couple from near Düsseldorf in Germany. They took it to the Audi garage anytime it needed anything. It has a complete main dealer service history from Audi. Everything that could possibly have been done on this car has already been done to it. Now, that's probably why this panorama roof is still working, because most of the panoramic roofs on these cars stopped working years ago, but this one is still going. Everything has been done on this car that needed to be done. Literally everything. It's amazing. We paid just over 2,000 euros for this car. Now, that might sound like quite a lot of money, but normally cars in this condition with this kind of mileage are going for at least twice that. We've found some online going for between 4,500 and 6,000 euros for a car like this in this condition. Now, there are a couple of things wrong with it, little things, and we will be addressing those little things. Here is a dent. Here is a scrape. Here's another scrape. The drum brakes at the back are toast. This needs a little bit of black paint. There are, however, a few things we've already done. For example, the front brakes. I've changed the discs, or the rotors as some people call them, and the pads. And let's take it for a little drive now. So, driving the little A2. Now, these are bumpy little country roads here, and I'm guessing that the car's still running on its original shocks and springs, so that may be something for the future as well, get them changed over. But it rides perfectly for a little car. Like I say, it's perfectly economical. It's actually on 16-inch wheels, 16-inch rims, which for 20 years ago on such a small car, it's pretty big. That was an optional extra, of course. It doesn't have much, obviously. It's just a little car. It's got electric front windows. It's got windy rear windows. Par for the course. It only came with a manual gearbox. You may occasionally find one with an automatic gearbox for sale, but that's been sort of swapped out over the years. It didn't originally come with an automatic gearbox. Now, like I said before, this is the 1.4 litre petrol version. They had petrol and diesel versions, and this car was designed to be as economical as possible. But one variant of this car was starting to rain. That was good timing, wasn't it? Was one of the most economical cars ever made. They managed to get it to use less than 3 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers, which is basically 100 miles per gallon. That's UK miles per gallon, by the way. So we're talking, what's that, about 80, over 80 miles per gallon US. I mean, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And that was a very clever little version of this car. It had a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder diesel engine. It had sort of like a flappy paddle style automated manual gearbox, which was an absolute disaster, and most of them have fallen apart or have been replaced over the years. But this really was a wonder little car. They changed the aerodynamics of it. It was narrower, the wheel arches were narrower, it had much thinner tires. It was basically, you know, way ahead of its time. That was the whole point of this little car. It was supposed to be innovative to save people as much money as possible. So although it may have not been a cheap car to buy, it was certainly a cheap car to run. Until something went wrong with it, that is. People did complain about the horrendous service costs at Audi dealerships. But again, we're talking normal Audi prices for normal Audi cars. That's just the way it was. People misunderstood what this car was all about, which is why it didn't sell very well. Nowadays, though, 20 years on, these things are being snapped up whenever they appear. Whenever you can get a good one, they're being snapped up. And the prices for good ones are, I think I mentioned this earlier, are becoming astronomical. So this car, if we look after it, which we will, and do everything that needs doing to it, which we will, it won't only hold its value, it will go up in value. So this little unassuming aluminium Audi is actually a savings account on wheels. Bet you'd never hear someone say that. Buy a 20-year-old Audi and make money. So there you have it. This is our little Audi A2. And we're very proud of it. We do like it. We will be using it for our daily purposes. We will be using it for the channel. I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on it. It needs a service, so it'll be getting a standard service. I've already changed the brakes at the front because they really needed doing before we could drive it properly. Now, obviously, I can't show you that now, but changing brakes is, you know, that's dead easy. What I will be doing is changing the brakes at the back, the drum brakes at the back. I will show you that because that's so overly engineered. It's typical German. It's so overly engineered the way they've done it. So I'll be showing you that. So it needs that. There are little cosmetic things that we will be doing over time, so I'll show you that as well. I will also be doing a spot more cleaning or detailing. Now, in the last video I asked you, thank you for commenting by the way, I asked you if you would like to see videos along those lines, you know, me detailing the cars and things, and someone said yes, we want to see that as well. So I will be doing a detailing video of this and of the Kodiaq and any other cars we may have over time. So I will be doing that for you as well. So there you are, that's what's planned. Now let's throw it into a corner. Oh, look at that, brilliant. That's in 5th gear, down to 4th, throw it into a wet corner and it flies round. So there you go. So it handles quite nicely as well. My poor wife filming this is being thrown around the cabin. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's our little car. So I hope you enjoyed the little introduction to our little Audi A2. Thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get as many subscribers together as we can before Christmas. It's October 2020, and I said in the last video, wouldn't it be great if we could get up to 10,000 subs by Christmas time? That would be cool. 5% of people watching these videos on my channel are subscribers, which means 95% of you aren't. Hit the subscribe button, people. Help us out a little bit. Yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time with some more car news. Bye-bye. And we're very lucky because our panorama nochmal.